Our early Chapter 5 previews start by telling us where the story is meant to go next for Chapter 4's most tragic character, who is massively hyped before the game's launch. Only to receive 22 seconds of screen time, is Pianosaurus really gone from the series for good, or will he somehow return? As many theories suggest, the Pianosaurus we encountered is actually just a smaller toy version of the real deal. Similar to how we see smaller toy versions of some of the other characters in Safe Haven, because for a dinosaur, Pianosaurus really isn't that big in the scene, in comparison to and us the player, but it turns out the true story was actually spelled out for us by Poppy Playtime CEO, which started with his response to a fan who asks why the heck he designed such a cool character, just to waste it, which basically sums up the generally disappointed reaction fans had to seeing Pianosaurus' potential immediately shut down in this chapter, to which the CEO actually gives us a pretty interesting response to the situation, asking exactly how he was a waste, following with another statement where he says, "I mean, you'd have to ask Seth. But to me, part of it was just for the meme, implying that Pianosaurus was possibly designed as a sort of joke character for the game. Obviously not designed to return in future chapters, but we're given more of a confirmation of Pianosaurus' actual fate in Chapter 5 by the main director for Poppy Playtime's previous projects. He starts by telling us that behind the scenes, Pianosaurus, his character, was essentially the least planned out character before Chapter 4's release, and that was originally created just to be the random toy, taken out in some horrific way, just to introduce the main star of the show. Doy, it wasn't really designed to return later on, but the story isn't over for Pianosaurus just yet, as Mob left behind one final detail about the character. It turns out we're told about an entire dinosaur band from Pianosaurus cardboard, cut out, showing us the potential for some of the other members to show up in Chapter 5. Instead, there's only one problem. Pianosaurus cutout tells us that he was in a band with the other bandmates before the asteroid hit, giving us the idea that Pianosaurus was the only one left after some sort of freak accident took out the others. At least that's what it seemed like. You see, Mob secretly revealed the truth behind the band on Poppy Playtime's official website, where they actually released a newer description for Pianosaurus, despite his limited screen time, that specifically mentions the full set of musicians he was released with. But more importantly, it says, "Remember what happened to the dinosaurs." Yeah, so do. These guys don't worry though. These punks think it's all kind of a joke. Meaning they all remember what happened. They all remember the asteroid, implying that this symbolic asteroid event Pianosaurus says destroyed his band never actually happened. It was literally just a joke. As again, his description tells us these punks think it's all kind of a joke. And on top of this, we're even able to see how Pianosaurus experiment log labels Pianosaurus as not very functional and out of tune, referencing the other band members as a better possibility for the experiment. Perhaps one of the others from its line would have presented better music, putting us in a pretty strong direction towards the Dino Band's return. In Chapter 5, the previous director of Poppy Playtime even helps confirm this idea by telling us that Mob have essentially added characters later on. Due to the feedback they get from players, we're able to see that in the case of the Nightmare Critters, Mob was trying to make more of a last-minute addition to the 4th chapter that clearly went along with the massive hype and support the original Smiling Critters received in Chapter 3. And because of the same hype and support building up for Pianosaurus in their next game, it makes perfect sense for Mob to take this as their sign to give us some of his other bandmates in Chapter 5. But in terms of the rest of this whole Chapter 5 situation, other aspects of it have already been confirmed. The creators behind the series already dropped a sort of preview into their future games development that tells us what to be expecting, along with the CEO of Mob's recent confirmation of the next chapter on its way. Looking to be even better than the last one, we're also given more of a secret update behind the scenes. It turns out the ex-director of the entire series was recently asked about the future of the franchise from a fan who tried to get more details about the 5th chapter. Specifically, to which the ex-director reveals that he's already completely written a version of the next chapter that Poppy Playtime's company still has to look over and approve of first, and it turns out we actually know early details about this completed version that were told by some of the other game developers. For starters, it's meant to likely be even darker than Chapter 4 was, as we're given an older statement revealing much darker, more intense chapters were on the way. In comparison to the 3rd one, obviously telling us that Chapter 5 is meant to follow down the same dark path as the previous chapters, and possibly be the scariest of all, as these ideas are meant to dethrone. The third chapter, we're also told to be expecting Chapter 5, along with all the future chapters. From this point, to be following along the same sort of path as Chapter 3. Spekiak, specifically telling us to look out for more gruesome moments, dark scenes, and twist endings and surprises, as those are the main things Poppy Playtime CEO has highlighted in reference to his future projects so far that we've been continuing to see, but we're also told something we've never seen before is possibly on its way as well. Multiple possible endings for Poi Playtime Chapter 5. Similar to how you're able to unlock multiple different endings in different Five Nights at Freddy's games behind the scenes, Mob has discussed this idea referencing future projects. Specifically, as a fan asked one of the main staff members about the possibility of testing out multiple endings, specifically bad and good endings, for one of their previous chapters, to which we were given the very interesting response of "we've talked about it before, but it's such a huge undertaking from a production perspective that we're not doing them right now, maybe in the future though," which was actually such a big topic at the time, that it was even officially addressed a second time, where we're told that they thought about adding it, but it was too ambitious again, telling us to wait for the future. But with how long ago these statements were actually made, why would we be bringing them back up now? Well, the reason it strongly connects to Chapter 5 specifically is because we've actually seen Mob testing these similarly crazy, ambitious ideas recently behind the scenes. In Chapter 4, we were shown bits of code that tell us there was meant to be an entire side quest section in Safe Haven that has you completing different tasks for Due before the whole area gets destroyed. And while this feature is obviously different than multiple endings to the game, it shows that Mob are finally choosing now to experiment with these crazy ideas that transform how the game is played. As we're told behind the scenes, that the Mob development team has also been continuing to grow and improve in ways that would allow them to make something like multiple endings actually happen. But one of the biggest mysteries we never see answered from our previous chapter is what exactly the prototype is meant to look like, as we were only given this single scene of him walking by that was revealed to just be the shadow of the prototype when investigated further. What does his full body look like? Well, turns out behind the scenes, we were actually given pretty big details about this from the game devs that included a whole scrapped character model. A model that had pretty strong connections to what we're told about the prototype's appearance, that at least helps to put us in the right direction, and I'm able to reveal everything we're told about this model and the prototype's appearance in general in this video right here. So for what we're told about them early, make sure to check it out.